Many of the most capable ADHD professionals I work with are also the most exhausted. They're intelligent, ambitious, high-performing. They can produce incredible results, but they can't always do it consistently. One week they're on fire, the next they can't even start simple tasks. Or maybe it's more like one day on, one day off pattern. Sound familiar? If it does, I want to remind you of something that you might already know intellectually, I grant you, but something when you're neurodivergent, we need to be reminded of over and over sometimes until it really sinks in. This isn't a motivation problem. It's not a discipline problem, and it's definitely not laziness. There's something deeper going on here. And in this video, we're going to explore why this cycle happens and how you can start moving towards calm, regulated, and sustainable performance. Hi, my name is Jamie Vasilian, the Hypnosis for ADHD Sustainable Performance Specialist, helping ADHD entrepreneurs and ambitious professionals go from burnout to sustainable performance. And if you're new to this channel, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this with anyone that you think could benefit. Anyway, let's dive back in. A lot of high-performing ADHD professionals are stuck in a hidden cycle. It goes something like this. You get a deadline, an opportunity, or a burst of inspiration. You lock in and hyperfocus kicks in. You work long hours, you're sharp, productive, you feel unstoppable. Oh, and perhaps you take forever to get started, and once you do, you don't want to stop. So you forget to take breaks, right? And even though you're pushing and pushing and pushing, it feels good. If not for the simple fact that when you have ADHD, you often struggle to focus in the first place. So that feeling of being able to focus, finally, it's kind of novel. And so you chase the high that your dopamine-starved brain is so hungry for. But it doesn't last forever, because then it's the dreaded crash. And it's annoyingly predictable that every high is followed by a low. And the higher the high, the lower the low. Energy drops, motivation disappears, and self-doubt creeps in, and you feel really low. And even though part of you wants to keep going, you can't. You've hit the wall of ADHD awful, and eventually you recover. Usually a fair amount of frustration and self-criticism, just enough to do it all over again. From the outside, this can look like high performance, and in some ways it is, but it's not sustainable. And part of you already knows that, which is enough for you to ask the question, is there another way to do this? Now I'm going to repeat myself here, but for good reason, because sometimes you need to be reminded of the truth over and over until it finally sinks in. The problem is not your intelligence, it's not your ambition, and it's definitely not laziness. And this might surprise you a bit what I'm going to say next. It's not entirely ADHD either. Yes, ADHD makes things harder, but the deeper issue is this. You've been using your nervous system in the only way you knew how, and that way was exhausting it. But there is another way. Now, most productivity advice completely misses this. It focuses on things like time management, discipline, habits, planning systems, and yes, those things can help to a certain extent. It's important when we have ADHD or autism to understand the effect of the environment or habits on our performance and come up with individualized strategies and systems that work for us. But these structures are only part of the solution, and these structures sit on top of a foundation, which is your nervous system. So whilst those structures can help, their effectiveness assumes that your nervous system is also stable. Of course, for many ADHD professionals, it isn't. Instead, productivity is driven by pressure. Deadlines create urgency. Urgency creates adrenaline and dopamine, and that creates focus. That's why you might say, I work best under pressure. And for a short time, that's true. But there's a cost, because you're not running on a stable system, you're running on stress. Eventually, your nervous system pushes back, even against strategies and systems that can actually help. You start to resent your to-do list. You get bored of systems like Pomodoro. Everything starts to feel like even more pressure, even more demand. Nothing seems to work, not for long anyway. And then you crash again. So what's missing here? Well, it's not more discipline, it's nervous system regulation. There's a principle in neuroscience that performance peaks in a middle zone. Too little stimulation, you're bored. Too much, you're overwhelmed. The sweet spot is in the middle. Calm, focused, engaged. I call this the ADHD satiation zone. But as we've already seen, most ADHD professionals don't live in that Goldilocks zone. They tend to live at the extremes. When I was a teenager, I remember looking out my window and seeing my neighbour sitting in his dad's Ferrari kit car. He hits the accelerator and suddenly shoots forward almost straight into the driveway opposite. I rush outside, excited to find out what had happened, and he said, "You know, this thing accelerates so fast, you have to be really aware of the brakes." And that stuck with me. Years later, when I heard ADHD expert Dr. Halliwell referring to ADHD being like a race car brain but with bicycle brakes, that analogy really resonated. Fast, powerful, high performance, but not knowing when to take the foot off the accelerator and lacking brake control. So you crash, and then you crash again. Now, this is where what I call active recovery becomes essential. Think of it like taking pit stops during a race. Even the fastest cars in the world stop to refuel, to reset, and readjust. Human performance is meant to work the same way. When you learn to regulate your nervous system, your energy becomes more stable, your focus becomes more consistent, and productivity stops feeling forced. You stop relying on adrenaline alone, and you start operating from a place of calm control. Now, this is also where deeper approaches like ADHD hypnosis and other somatic therapies can really help. Because this cycle isn't just conscious, it's subconscious. It's driven by automatic patterns in the nervous system and the subconscious. These subconscious beliefs such as nothing I try works, or I can't do this because I have ADHD, for example. But those patterns and beliefs can be changed when you know how. And you don't change them by fighting them and trying to stop them, but by becoming familiar with what a stable nervous system and hence stable performance actually feels like. And then turning that into a habit, into new normal. ADHD hypnosis helps calm the nervous system, improve emotional regulation, and reduce stress-based productivity loops. Now, the most successful ADHD professionals I work with aren't the ones pushing the hardest all the time. They're the ones who are the most regulated, because real performance isn't built on intensity alone. And if you want to perform at a high level consistently, or more consistently, sometimes, as I'm always reminding my clients, you have to slow down so you can go faster. You need to be more familiar with your brakes. And if this message resonated with you today, and you know you're capable of more, which I'm sure you are, but just can't access it consistently, well, not yet anyway, then you'll probably find this channel helpful. I'll be sharing more on how to actually regulate ADHD to experience sustainable performance, not just manage it on the surface. Anyway, I'm curious, does your productivity feel like all or nothing? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.